Hello and welcome to another episode of Digi-Tools in a Cruel World. This week's episode has been made possible by Employment Hero. Thank you to them. And we will also be joined later on the episode by Advancetrack and by Tugger. So for those of you who aren't aware, Advancetrack specialises in outsourcing and more recently their pod sourcing, which we've spoken about on the episodes. And Tugger, for those of you who also don't know, John, hit me up, help me on this one, is a number of data sources that connect and make it possible for you to view those in one application. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Tugger are really great at being able to get hold of data from the products that you're using, the SaaS products in particular, but also some of the on-prem ones, and then get that into dashboards or help you get that into dashboards if you want to build them yourselves. So it's all about reporting and getting hold of data to provide context.
And we're really excited because Tugger is a new sponsor, but is not a new app. They joined us last year at the award ceremony, and they've had a stellar year by the look of it, including with they got themselves around, didn't they, at the the DAS event this year with their little beers, didn't they?
Yeah, they did indeed. Yeah. And they've got a name that you can't forget, right? So that's it definitely sticks in the mind.
They've got a name that you can't forget. Anyway, as you've heard the dulcet tones of my co-host John Toon, how you doing, John? Tell me what's the latest goss this week that everyone should know about.
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. I mean, it's obviously very warm at the moment here in the UK, so yeah, enjoying the fluctuating heat all the time. But yeah, what's new? I mean, I'm just quite busy because obviously with the news about the Menzies merger for us was announced fairly recently. So yeah, I'm just kind of busy in the prep for that in terms of getting things ready for technology combinations and moving vendors and moving people onto new products and things like that. So it's going to be a busy old few months and stuff. So that's very nice.
Really, congrats on the big news. So is it going to be a name change? Didn't Ryan suggest a really good name for you guys?
Probably, but not one that I'm willing to repeat at this moment in time.
I'm gonna let Ryan repeat his suggestions.
Yeah, I think he should. Yeah.
Very valuable, actually. So if you can guess what the suggestion was, what was it? So you've got Menzies and Beaver Strubbers.
Yeah.
Okay. So, guess what the combination could be.
And just remember, it's Ryan, so you don't have to aspire to a high level of thinking.
Well, I'm joined once again with Ian Gregory, the CTO of Advancetrack, and we're diving into a specific service offering that I did tease at the end of the last chat that we had, which is pod sourcing. Now, I've heard about this. I was there kind of when it was released over a year ago. What is pod sourcing, Ian?
So pod sourcing really grew out of our frustration with the offshoring model. The problem with offshoring is it's a bit of a lottery. So if you have a customer, you contract with somebody for this individual. If you're lucky, they're brilliant and they stay with you forever. The reality is there a lot of the time, if you get the right person, you train them up, you spend a lot of time getting them right, into your firm's way of working. And then another offshore offers them more money and they leave. And you're back to scratch again. And when I talk to accountants out and about around the industry, it seems to happen an awful lot. And it's a problem. It's not good for our customers long term. So we asked ourselves the question, how do you actually avoid that happening? And the answer is, well, you set up a team. It needn't be a particularly big team, but by having a pod which consists of some more junior people, different skill sets, a leader, then you're much less at risk from the actions of any one individual upsetting your business. So that could be, people going on holiday, it could be going sick. It allows us to give people career progression, which means they're going to stick around for longer. And basically, it means that we can support our customers by making sure they've got a resource over time that they can grow with their business.
Launched a year ago. You're is a model that's starting to be adapted and replacing your traditional process-driven, just outsourced way of operating?
Yeah, very, very much so. Certainly our customers have been very keen to hear about it, and many of them have migrated their existing offshoring team to a pod source model. I think if there's a challenge we've had, it's how to cope with our smaller customers. So if you've got a team of 10 or 20, it's relatively easy. But if you've only got 1 or 2 people, how do you move from an offshore to a pod source? So we've spent quite a lot of time thinking about how to cope with those smaller teams. So to some extent, it means maybe using people more part-time, so perhaps adding in a part-time reviewer and a part-time junior around a full-time dedicated individual. But coping with those small volumes so that we've got some mitigation to the fragility while still managing to keep it small enough for a smaller practice to be able to afford it.
A fascinating approach. And is this something that you envisage will grow, especially as we're now getting into that realm of AI infused ways of working? Do you think that pod sourcing kind of matches that, works with that? We talked about a bridge before for supporting clients. Do you think the pod sourcing structure is a better way, a better structure that helps with those transitions?
I think the advantage of the pod sourcing is that we can work directly within our customers' processes. So effectively, what we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of delivering the actual accounting work is defined by the customer. So if they want to adopt an AI model, we adopt it with them. I think it acts as a bridge, particularly for the larger firms. I think with the smaller firms, I think as AI begins to come along, it may be more interesting as to where the balance is and whether they actually decide to move perhaps to more of an outsourcing type model. But I think that's something we'll see play out. I think we're not at that point yet, but 2-3 years down the line, it may become, that model may come back into popularity.
Working, right? So the bigger firms tend to work on their own models, train it over their clients. Whereas my viewpoint is the smaller firms will use models that sit inside programs, which is a very different way of operating and therefore a different challenge for your team to work with as well. And I assume that this just means rather than just more systems, now you're working with more systems and more AI models, which means a broader challenge of education for your team. So yeah, the pod sourcing seems to make sense then, right? Because if they understand certain systems, they understand certain AI agents, then they're the best fit to work with a client rather than potentially, I guess, you're trying to get everyone to learn everything, which I think in most firms, right, doesn't work. Hence why you have those that just focus on like being a Xero or QuickBooks only firm. It's the way of just making it as deep an understanding rather than a broad understanding. And do you think this is going to be a big challenge then for not just you, but firms as well, to make sure that they aren't getting stretched too thin, they are focusing on something, pick a pathway and stick to it rather than, look at the next shiny object, which we've seen with cloud accounting to some extent?
I mean, I think particularly if you're a small firm, there is a strong argument of focus. You can't be all things to all people. And yet, you see some firms trying to do that. And if you're, let's say, all things to all people within one tiny little geographical area, it's going to be trickier than if you're a niche player in a particular industry. But even if you can just say just use Xero or just use QuickBooks, at least you're restricting the amount of stuff that you need to learn and that your team needs to learn. And the beauty of the pod sourcing model is, we can fit in around that structure. And yes, it's a dedicated team, but the people will move around as they develop. So, they might start off working for your firm, but in 2-3 years' time, they need a career move and a promotion. We might promote them into a team for a bigger company, bigger client. So, the flexibility is there. But the point is that if we've got those individuals still within Advancetrack, then we can draw on their skills and knowledge of your business. Because, they're literally sitting a few desks away. So it's better than them leaving us because they're bored and they haven't got the career opportunities. So I think, for us, the pods make a lot of sense. It means we've got a little bit more control over our business, yet we can still deliver what our customers need when they've got a defined process.
Yep, makes sense to me. Fascinating. Look, thanks again for coming on. I think I've learned not only a lot about, I guess, AI and its and how accounting may run in parallel to what's happened in manufacturing over the last few decades, but also, I guess, how Advancetrack are evolving their services to deal with this upcoming, not necessarily threat, but opportunity and challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few years ahead, I think.
We've got some great app news this week, so let's kick on with that and not keep the people waiting.
Awesome.
So kicking off this week, app news, Xero finally decided to get serious about inventory, but don't break out the confetti just yet. Xero has mostly been about invoices, payroll, bank fees, and etc. And they've left the goods-based businesses juggling stock across spreadsheets on third-party add-ons in the marketplace. Their inventory management has historically been functional, but basic, tracking quantities, costs, and handfuls of items. So there's nothing revolutionary there. But now they are rolling out bulk inventory adjustments and a refreshed purchase order experience. So in plain English, you can update multiple stock items in one go and see more orders on your screen at once. Handy, definitely. Game changing, which is, I think, the most overused word in this industry. It's not quite. But it's a start, and it's Xero catching up rather than leading the charge on this. I think the frustration for businesses that rely on tight stock control has historically made you rely on other apps if you're a Xero customer beyond the basics. So these updates are long overdue. The real question, I think, is whether Xero will actually deliver the advanced intuitive inventory tools that goods-based businesses have been begging for. Or if it's just an incremental improvement. For anyone running a product-heavy business, Xero is getting less painful on that, but it's still not the powerhouse inventory solution that you see in Dia or Sin7 or NetSuite that they have been offering it for years. But hopefully a promising start, and it's baby steps, not leaps.
I absolutely agree with you on that summary, Indy. And I think what's really nice to hear is, as a consequence of this, they're improving things like that purchase ordering process, because I think that's always been something that felt like it was a little bit bolted onto Xero. It was a bit of a weak product in terms of the workflow and the connectivity and stuff. But anything that Xero do to improve how their inventory product works is always good. I mean, we should bear in mind, of course, that, Xero bought an inventory product in the US quite a long time ago now, and there was a very broad expectation that they would sort of follow the same path that Intuit had done when they bought an inventory product, and really start bolting that into their core product and expanding out the capabilities so that maybe businesses didn't have to jump quite so early into products like Unleashed or Sin7, like you mentioned, because there is kind of definitely a gap somewhere in the middle between those, because those products tend to be quite complex, but Xero inventory typically have been quite simple, I guess. So yeah, who knows?
I think it's filling a good enough gap that the customers using it will at least see some solution in place that works for them.
I haven't actually seen these features in the live product yet, but I will be having a look fairly soon, and I'd be really interested in just sort of seeing how it enhances the capability of the Xero product. So I've got a quick update from FreeAgent. Obviously, as everyone knows, we're big fans of FreeAgent, and not just because they sponsor the pod, but because they're really proactive in rolling out updates and obviously integrations and various other things, and focusing on what really matters to their customers. So they now support CIS for contractors. So FreeAgent has had CIS in the product for a long time, particularly if you're a subcontractor, and I guess that kind of reflects the history of the product if you're going to wind the clock back a long way. But now if you're actually a contractor, you're now able to do all the stuff that you're obliged to do and do it in the product rather than doing it outside of the product, which is a bit of a pain in the backside, to be perfectly honest. So you can now manage deductions, which would come through on invoices and stuff that you're preparing or receiving. You can prepare the CIS 300 return, which is kind of the important regular return that you're going to file. And you can also create a payment and deduction statements, which you've got to give to your subcontractors when they're working for you. So again, another really important thing. So it's really neat to see that. Quite straightforward. I was going to say simple update, but I'm sure it wasn't simple to build and create, but it feels simple from the outside, and that's probably a good reflection of how good technology works.
Oh, very nice. Something that we've all kept an eye on, or if we haven't all kept an eye on, I certainly have. Vinyl has raised $2 million to build the AI meeting assistant accountants actually need. We've seen a bit of this before in Andrew Jordan and Connect 4, which was a much bigger promise in terms of the whole of the meeting software. And it didn't quite materialize because a number of different reasons. I think he went so broad and so big, and it was also a time pre-AI that I think the meeting tool didn't quite fix or make the have the right product market fit to cover every eventuality. It was a really good product, though. I used it myself. But Vinyl is different because they have stuck to purely the meeting minutes and notes, the things that the outputs that you want to take away, which, I hate saying this statement, but it's the built by accountants for accountants actually solves a problem that every firm faces. I'm really surprised that anything to do with that could come out of my mouth, considering Jordan really hates that. But there you go, Jordan. Meeting admin eats up 43 days a year, and Vinyl's post-meeting magic AI turns the discussion into structured notes, clear action items, synced follow-ups. Whether it's in-person or virtual, apparently it doesn't matter. Vinyl records and transcribes and summarizes meetings wherever they happen, and it's integrated into your workflow. So Xero Practice Manager, Carbon, FYI, Vinyl slots right in, no switching apps, no lost context. It's been backed by Tidal Ventures and the founders of Dext, KeyPay, and Ignition. Vinyl is already processing 150 hours of meetings per day across 400 firms in Australia, the UK, and the US. Compared to things like Otter AI, which I swear by, Vinyl isn't just a generic note taker, it's an accounting first one. So it captures the context, it surfaces the follow-ups, the flags opportunities, and even integrates directly with the practice management tools. So the result is less admin, more billable time, zero missed promises. In theory, that is so great for the accounting space. I haven't used it. Perhaps you have, John. I think it's a bold vision, and it sounds like a true AI executive assistant that captures all of the meetings, minutes, and the tasks and the whatnot, and then also loops it automatically in for human review, so that you've got a lot of things that you can kind of act on very quickly. And they've got big plans for this 2 million by the sound of it, because they're looking at like improving their mobile app and looking at other ways that they can help accountants reclaim the hours that they have spent on admin.
I think they do have a competitive challenge, but I guess by niching, you remove that competitive challenge to a degree.
Will you be using it?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. So although they've niched down into the segment, what they haven't done at the moment is build any connectors that are relevant to us as a practice in terms of our technology environment. I guess if you kind of look at the marketplace historically, with products like this and other products that have been in various ecosystems that we operate in, they do tend to go small practice first and scale upwards. It's very often it's very rare that you do the inverse and go after the big practices and then come down market. And equally, I guess it depends on your pricing model, but if you kind of look at how that works, there are a couple of hundred decent big firms wherever you draw the line around what big is, if in the UK at the very least. But there are almost 40,000 practices in total. So when you look at your total addressable market, if you go after small firms, that's 39,800 accounting practices to go after, which will bring you decent scale before you even start to tap into the top 200 firms, for example.
Well done, congrats, and we're going to keep our eyes on you. Stop what you're doing. Prepayments in Dext is also here. It's a bit of a change. It's live. It's included with the subscription. You can now create prepayment journals automatically within Xero just through a few simple clicks. So you just add the dates and you check the box functionality, and then you'll see updated automatically. One thing to note is that the prepayment is not automatically extracted from the document. So, but that's something that apparently Dext are considering and looking to iterate on that feature. So hopefully something that they will also continue to build on. But yeah, John, perspective on this. Is it long overdue, and how widely adopted do you think this feature is going to be?
It's massively long overdue. This is something, again, that has been talked about in the OCR marketplace for a long old time, and people, I guess, have struggled to understand why it's taken so long to come in. But at the moment, this seems like the frontier for accounting technology, because Ryan and I talked about this on the previous episode. There was another product that's launched this. We've seen that Jenesys and Briefcase have got this in their products. Mayday launched a prepayments and accruals module into their products not so long ago. Obviously, then if you kind of go upscale and upmarket into things like Blackline and Quadience and some of the other bigger products that serve a larger marketplace, particularly sort of the NetSuite SAP position, this kind of thing has been present for a long time. So we seem to be sort of bringing down market this kind of concept of like monthly financial close and stuff like that, which I guess for a small business or an entrepreneur probably isn't something that's really top of mind for them, because it's a very much a kind of management accounting, financial accounting kind of concept. And also it's a little bit weird because products like Xero QuickBooks just don't really have this concept of a monthly close, because you can just carry on rolling and posting, as live. But it is a challenge. It's a challenge for us as accountants providing management accounts and kind of providing reporting. It's a challenge, obviously, for businesses then to get a real context, which takes them away from just cash reporting, which isn't always great. So having things like this in products like this just makes our life so much easier. And what I would say about the Dext update, it's great to see it. It's nice to have it in there, but that extraction and that kind of like precipitation of the start of that process is something that needs to be much more automated to make it even easier, because for a lot of businesses that are using a Dext or something similar, what we're trying to optimize is automation in that process in terms of automated posting. So if you've then got to go back into product to do a manual pickup of a prepayment, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Very good point that it's coming down the track a little bit more for the smaller and mid-sized businesses, and I think that's invaluable data that in the end, as we introduce more technology to the fold, that it's likely that those businesses who would also benefit from those types of fractional CFO roles that produce management accountants in the past, it's never been possible. So I think we're going to see the advent of like the 1, 2, 3 man unicorns, and as a result, we're going to need to see that data entry, that data capture, and that surfacing of it a lot quicker anyway. So
yeah. Cool. I've got a very quick update from Jenesys, but quick but powerful, I would say. So Nikolai posted this on LinkedIn fairly recently, which is if you get when you get bills from suppliers and they're being processed, and it doesn't matter whether it's in Jenesys or in a myriad of other OCR tools or extraction tools and stuff, is that quite often when you're posting that into your own general ledger system, you will have things like tracking categories, a cost center, a project code or something. Pick your poison and pick your terminology based on the GL of your choice. But obviously your supplier doesn't know that. So you've kind of got to go in and manually deal with this. Again, very similar to the Dext thing with the prepayment stuff, is that whenever you're operating cost centers or tracking categories or something in Xero, for example, no matter how much you want to automate, you've always got to go in and either teach it a rule or manually intervene with that thing. What they've just launched in Jenesys is the ability to, when you get that email with the invoice attached, when you forward it on to Jenesys to be processed, you can actually forward on the details about what cost center or tracking category or whatever it is you want for that to be allocated to at the same time in the body of the email. I think that's really cool. I don't think anyone else on the market does that. I'm happy to be corrected, but I think that's a really neat way of like managing that kind of manual intervention part of the process, because unless you've got some kind of forwarding rule in your inbox, you're probably going to pick those emails up one by one and deal with them individually. So that's a really neat little update.
It's good, yeah. It's something that allows consistent data input in otherwise like could be a cumbersome workflow, but actually that's very, very simple for them. If you're training that to someone that's more junior in the team,
Correct.
Very simple for anyone to understand what they need to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a similar vein, I've also got an update from Briefcase. Again, another one that we picked up on LinkedIn from Ruben, the co-founder there.
Putting these next to each other at the same time.
Come on, of course. Of course we should.
Who came up with this flow, eh? Let's put them together.
It's the fight we all want to see, right? You know, where I've got the jelly in the cupboards ready to go. It's all good. But yeah, so Ruben announced this quick update into Briefcase, which it's all around VAT. Kind of similar to something that Jenesys are focusing in on, which is around this ability to manage tracking categories and codes and general ledger codes and stuff that you want to allocate. Because obviously, when you get multi-line invoices, sometimes you do want to split those down. And again, some of the OCR tools don't deal with the VAT element of that particularly well, because you'll have 3 line items maybe that are going to direct costs, and then you might have a line item that's going to overheads. And quite often what happens when you break down the line items and then manage the VAT is that just gets apportioned across the whole thing, which is not necessarily always correct, because something might be 0 rated versus a standard rated, for example. So what Briefcase have announced is you've got a one-click way of just analyzing the line items and seeing how those are allocated and stuff, and dealing with any corrections that might be required. So just helps you to deal with some of that flow that works. And they reckon that what they had before this covered about 50% of multi-line cases, and kind of now they've kind of like expanded this out. They reckon they kind of addressed all of the nuances that any kind of business might have to address as they go through that process of dealing with invoices.
Can I ask a question that is more at the broader view? So we take like the 50,000 feet up in the air view of this. Do you think the Briefcase in the type of feature and function that is providing there, do you think that's like a prime acquisition target for like a Xero or a Dext? Who would you pick out of the two?
Oh, I mean that's interesting, because I mean the way that Briefcase works is they're using direct access to models, so they're accessing things like Claude or OpenAI, etc., direct through the APIs to do this extraction and analysis, and obviously build out a whole set of workflows. That is a different approach to standard OCR, which both Xero and Dext have in their products, as a consequence of the histories or the acquisitions and things that they've made. And we spoke with Stephen Edgington a while ago in terms of how do they feel about the utilization of LLMs for complementing what they do. And I think he was more interested in the context that because it can sometimes be a bit hit and miss. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think where the opportunity of a product like Briefcase comes is again, it's the same as Dext and everyone else, is about the historical data context that you get, and then being able to analyze that at a really broad scale with a really powerful model gives you some real insights into how organizations run and operate, because not everyone posts bills to the same GLs, and not everyone does the same things with VAT for various reasons, whether you're partially exempt or whatever. And so maybe that's the power of a product like this in terms of its true value for a potential acquirer, rather than what we perceive from a bookkeeping and accounting point of view, which is around process automation and those incremental gains.
You've spoken like a true accountant. You stayed on the fence. Anyway, moving on. What else is silently killing cash flow of businesses everywhere? And it's something I banged on about for a long time, is late payments. And we're not talking the small numbers here. Globally, we're staring down at $3 trillion in a late payment crisis. This is where one of my favorite apps, who have just had such a sustainable business model, this is where Chaser comes in. They've been leading the accounts receivable automation space for a while, and now they've added 2 other features. I'm going to call them game changing, even though we know that that's not the word that India likes to use, but let's call them that, because automated late fees is something that allows, it means that payers don't get away and your terms are enforced without lifting a finger. And early payment discounts, so obvious, because a little incentive goes a long way and your prompt payer gets a reward for it. It's simple, less admin, fewer errors, happier customers, and most importantly, cash flow flowing in on time. So if you're tired of chasing the payments and you want something that's going to enhance your practice, then I think, honestly, I believe that that's a really great game changer. So yeah, well done to Chaser.
I think this update is really fascinating, because I've dabbled a little bit with Chaser, but it's never been my product of choice. I'm partly just because we don't serve a kind of client that really that really works for us, I guess. So it's just one of those things, I guess. But I wonder if there's so much more to come out of this from a Chaser point of view. We know that we've talked about e-invoicing in the past and what that potentially brings. That with the information that Chaser are going to have, maybe alongside some credit data from another source, and maybe alongside some other information and data sources. And I guess talking about Tugger and being able to have context suddenly gives you real information about supply chain capability from a cash flow point of view, which might make a huge difference to this challenge. And we know that governments, not just here in the UK, but around the world, are trying to solve this late payments problem, particularly for the SME space, either by legislation or by other means. But we have also talked about the fact that, at least in my opinion, SMEs are partly complicit in this problem insofar as they don't have good credit processes quite often. They don't have good credit control processes quite often. And sometimes they just don't have the time, space, and capacity to deal with your queries or challenges around invoices, the legitimacy of them sometimes, or maybe if they've made a mistake, correcting them. All of that just gums up the system and slows things down. So anything that kind of helps with this is really welcome. But I just wonder, like, how much more can we do? There's got to be. It feels to me like there's so much more we could do in this space.
Yeah, I feel like that we need a new, I don't know, something that's like succinct, right? So automate, and I think Chaser, actually, to be fair, I can't take credit for this, mainly from the article, I think. So automate, enforce, reward. That's it. Like, I think the payments right there, the automation of it, the making it enforceable, and the incentive behind it helps then speed the cycle up. Because if you know that you're going to get a discount, or you know that it's in your interest to speed that cycle up for yourself, for your supplier, then that's where I think we'll solve the challenge. And I don't think that we've seen our own government go far enough on it yet, because I think we saw that the consultation was open for it. I don't know. We need to follow up on that to see if there was anything more done on it. But it's something that Xero have banged the drum on for many, many years. And seeing what Chaser are doing, I think that it shows that this is a problem that's going to be solved by entities like Chaser, who are making it their main mission.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Right. So last update from me, which is a quick one from Float. And I don't think we've spoken about Float for feels like ages and ages and ages. And that's very remiss of us, because they are putting out updates on a fairly regular basis. But here's one that I find really, really interesting and exciting. So they've just brought into the product the ability to do VAT and GST predictions on a cash basis scheme. What that means, I guess, for you, if you're a Float user, is that now you can make this prediction of VAT cash flows a little bit easier, because it's now going to automatically flow through from the data that you pull in from Xero. You could also use 3 different prediction models as well that come into this. So you can use a model they call Quick, which basically assumes that everything gets paid quickly or on time. You've got a worst case where effectively you can say, right, okay, well, I'm not going to get paid by my customers, but I'm still going to have to pay my suppliers. And then there's an advanced version where you can basically like fiddle with the numbers and tweak things to be a bit more suited to how you work. So I think that's a really neat ability to kind of like see 2 or 3 different versions of what you want to look at almost straight away. And then the other thing that you can do as well is that you can recalculate the VAT every time you adjust your forecast. So again, this is really important, because like this is one of the reasons why I guess a lot of businesses, when they're doing forecasting, you bolt this into Excel, because like managing VAT can be quite challenging. And so the fact that this is now into Float is I think it's a really great neat little feature.
I love it. Well done, Colin. It looks slick, right? They've stayed away from doing the 3-way forecasting in some of the things that Float do, but that I wonder which direction they're going to go in with this. This is quite granular. So, what do you think, John?
I mean, I guess for a lot of organizations, if they've kind of ticked off the big ticket item in VAT, which is cash accounting versus accrual accounting, I guess the next one that you might go looking at would be some kind of one of the other VAT schemes. So whether that's maybe like one of the margin schemes or a partial exemption stuff, because again, that's always a bit of a pain in the backside to deal with, and managing that in a cash flow forecast can become quite complex. So maybe that's the next thing to go after. I would say probably a margin scheme is probably marginally easier to do. God, that's terrible. Over partial exemption, because that can get really, really down into the nitty gritty and the weeds of transaction by transaction. But that'd be the way I go, I think. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Craig Morrell from Tugger. We're going to be talking about AI in reporting and its effect on reporting. And I guess, given what you guys do, Craig, that's a really it's a really big topic at the moment, clearly, but also how that interlinks into getting hold of data, getting access to data, cleaning that data up, presenting that in some way, shape, or form, and that's the bread and butter for you guys. So tell me how you're seeing AI, large language models, having an effect on what you guys are capable of doing and able to do, I guess.
Yes, I mean, traditionally you were talking about looking at sort of typically rows of data or data in certain formats, might be JSON format, and you'd essentially be parsing that and you'd be producing reports off the back of it. But now you're starting to see you can do some kind of weird and wonderful things that you couldn't easily do before. As an example, a client we've worked with recently, they take a lot of phone calls, I think like 2,000 or 3,000 phone calls per day in their call center. But what wasn't happening is there was no link back to the management system. So where they were storing all the data that was around the cases they were dealing with, there was no link between them. So what they said is, right, can we do something with AI? Because we've got all the call transcripts. What can we do with them? So we went, okay, right. So we've got the connector there that was doing the extraction. The platform that we're extracting from was a platform called 8x8. So it's a huge call center platform. Done the data extraction, but then what we're able to do with the data is then using OpenAI, send that data up and say, right, okay, can you give me the national insurance number and the date of birth for this caller? Can you identify those? And, basically, I think it's with about 98% accuracy, it could pull out those details. So even if people goes in and and throughout it, so they go N, or I can't remember J, whatever, it could actually still pull out the details. So what we're then able to do is, okay, we've pulled out the details. Now we know what they are. We can then do a lookup into the other piece of data and say, well, actually, there's a record here where this person's national insurance number is this. That's their date of birth, so we know that's their person. So that then allows them to link that data together and say, well, actually, now we know exactly how many calls each person's making. We know the types of calls that have been dealt with. And then they can look at, well, how do you improve efficiency to stop these types of calls? Why is this, demographic calling? Because bear in mind, you've got date of birth information, so you know how old these people are. So can we, improve processes around that? So there's a load of stuff that you can glean by doing that. But there is no real way before AI was around that you could have done anything like that. You would have always sort of had to struggle, because even if you use, try not to get too technical, but if you're using regular expressions, that wouldn't work on a piece of data where someone is going N, J, because it doesn't, there is no matching to that.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Is like being able to use a large language model like this just accelerates the type of work that you can do. And as you say, either extracting information, or I guess equally in that call center situation, using things like sentiment analysis, being able to kind of get a feel for how that customer's reacting to the customer service agent, I guess is really important. And again, something that you wouldn't really have been able to tangibly do, certainly in real time before.
No, it was basically impossible. I think they tried for 2 or 3 years to come up with a solution, and there was no way of sort of real world way of coming up with a solution. But yeah, that was relatively quick to deploy. Obviously quite a techie type solution. It does require some effort, but nevertheless, it's doable.
I guess the challenge is that large language models aren't just available to you guys at Tugger, they're available to everyone out there in the market. And I wonder, do you feel that creates a bit of a challenge sometimes for you guys when you're maybe engaging with customers or clients, because they might just turn around to you and say, well, why can't we just use ChatGPT to kind of do this now?
The problem with something like, okay, can you use ChatGPT to solve the problem is basically, in a nutshell, it can't. And the reason it can't do that is because you've got all this data in some sort of format. So say you've extracted your data from Xero, and you'll have different sort of data entities. You'll have, journals, you'll have journal lines, you'll have invoice and invoice lines, and you'll have other stuff in there as well, things like tracking categories. The problem is when all these sort of things have been developed by an organization like Xero or whatever, they'll have all these identifiers that make sense to, a developer or make sense to them, but they don't necessarily make sense to a language model. And so it's still struggling in that sort of shape or form. You've kind of got to teach it to know stuff about your data first.
Yeah. Well, I guess what are the opportunities for you guys going forward then using the power of AI? Because you obviously talked about that sort of like mini case study that you had with that one particular business, and we talked about there's other opportunities to use your data. But I guess one of the real powers that you have is you're not just focusing on, say, like finance data, but you're kind of like bringing all of this information together to kind of provide more context. And so, is that where maybe AI could be more utilized to be able to enhance that context?
One of the problems we've still got out there is that not everybody understands Power BI yet. A lot of people can use a Power BI report, and then there are people who still don't know some of the functionality that exists in there, because some of it's not quite intuitive in terms of drilling down into data and drilling through. Most people have to be sort of even shown how to do that, because, like I say, the interface is not that intuitive. And so actually, when it comes to actually building the reports, if we want in our customers to build out reports, which a lot of them do themselves. Yeah. Because effectively, in a lot of the ways, we're like the middleware in between, the data and the reporting tool. The more people who can build reports themselves without using us, without actually requiring us to kind of give them a helping hand with that, the better, because it means that there's more people out there who want to then extract their data and then want to be able to use a platform out like ours to extract and warehouse that data so that they then can go down that route of producing reports. So the more it evolves and the more Copilot evolves with Power BI, the better it is for us. I mean, to be honest, we'd love it to go a lot faster than it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think having that tool there, to help people interpret the information they're seeing is the real opportunity and power there. Not necessarily to help them build reports, which it seems to be focused on. But I'm sure we could talk about AI and its use cases forever, Craig. But I'm very conscious of time, so let's wrap up there. I'm sure if people want to speak to you directly about the powers of AI and what they can do with Tugger and combining these two technologies together, they can definitely reach out to you. And of course, I'm sure we can catch up and talk about this at a separate time over a beer at some point. So we'll do that for sure.
Thanks again for joining us on this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you haven't already signed up to our waitlist for the awards, then please make some time to do so. I think you'll enjoy meeting like-minded people in the industry. You'll also get the chance to celebrate some heroes in our space. And it's the night before Accountex. So if you're at a loose end and thinking of what you'd like to do to make sure you get to Accountex nice and early, then join us at the awards. It will be at the Impossible in Manchester. Look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next episode.